Hello students, Professor Olling here to talk to you today about Philip K. Dick's Martian time slip. The reading for this week, the first meeting, it was chapters 7, 8, and 9. For the second meeting was chapters 10 and 11. And I think these are chapters where there's a lot going on, but let me prioritize certain scenes, certain moments, certain ideas. Because at this point in the book, we've got all the characters drawn, got the plot started, but things are going to get pretty complicated, right? Because it's a book about time slippage, right? So let me help you with these readings for this week. This video is especially for people who maybe didn't make the optional class, but it's also, not a bad review for anybody struggling with those middle of the book chapters where there's a lot going on, kind of half hidden out of view. So, chapters 7 and 8, not key. Make sure you read them, follow what's happening, but I don't think there's anything too deep or mysterious in a lot of ways in those two chapters. Chapter 9 has a key scene that I'm going to take some time with here. Leo, Jack, and Manfred go to the FDR Mountains. Leo has made plans to purchase this tract of land that he's got an insider information on that is going to be developed by the UN. Eventually, colonists from Earth will come out here. And he's bought it real cheap because everybody figured it was just a waste of space. Secretly knowing he could resell at a great profit. That plan only emerges clearly once they're there. And Jack expressed his disapproval. Jack and Leo are opposites in so many ways, including his whole attitude towards land speculation, the future, making money. Leo's going to become a very wealthy person because they go on from this scene to the deed office and they do all the right paperwork and everything suggests that, he will make all this money if, nothing goes wrong. We'll save that for a little bit later in this video about how Arnie will try to disrupt that plan. But I do think it's really interesting that Jack shows no interest in land speculation. He disapproves of what his father is doing. He feels it's one person making a profit while other people have to struggle later on to pay for like rent because everybody's kind of gouging the system. More importantly, in that chapter, the part that's so mysterious and will be so central to the book. While they're talking, Manfred's drawing, and they see that at first his picture seems to be almost like an architectural drawing. It's the landscape they're at. They recognize that arid, empty Mars landscape, and then the FDR Mountains, Franklin Delano Roosevelt Mountains, which are not all foresty and green, right? This is Mars. These mountains are stark and kind of very little life on them, arid, almost like deserts in the form of mountains, right? Probably very rocky. And the drawing suggests that these buildings will appear. At first, they'll look all perfect, like, dorms for everybody. Everybody gets their own little, tiny apartment in these huge buildings. But the more he draws, the more it feels like the building's fallen into disrepair. And it basically looks like whoever is forced to live there is just like, here, you go to die kind of thing. And this ties into a troubling vision that Manfred had, I think a little bit earlier in the book, where he imagines himself like really ancient and old, 200 years old, and they kept alive by machines. I think what the idea is that someone like him would be dying on Mars in this vast hospital hospice thing, but all the nurses and doctors would be automatons, robots, like in the school. And so they kind of keep humans alive. Terrifying vision. So Manfred associates that future with Amweb and the development by the UN on property that Leo was wise to first purchase. So the UN has to purchase it from him. Now, one thing to know about any visions of the future in the book, particularly they seem to be Manfred's visions. The book presents them, and I think Jack fears this, that these are like absolute visions of reality. This is, what must happen. Think about how in Charles Dickens's Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge is shown different possible futures, it seems to me, by the ghost of Christmas future or whatever. That's more, I think, what goes on in Philip K. Dick novels when they're discussing the future. He likes the idea that speculating on what might be altered or changed by the future is like a battle between, are our futures, our lives predestined, or is there free will? He usually comes down on the side that even though we're not powerful beings, a lot of us, we still have free will. So I don't think he wants to suggest that the future that Manfred sees is absolutely the future. We'll discuss this in class. It is a possible future. And Arnie says when he discovers that this is a possible future for Manfred, that Manfred would end up in this miserable place, he says, I would prefer that not happen to you. Helio hopes that it won't happen to Manfred. So let me move on to chapters 10 and 11 because there's so much there. So from chapter 9, key scene is up in the mountains, what the boy draws, and how the two adult men see it and how they respond differently. Jack's kind of appalled, and Leo, as you might guess, at first he's like, I don't want to see that. But he doesn't like make any plans to not go ahead with what he's going to do. His feeling is like a lot of developers or speculators, right? I'm gonna make it big. I got lots of money. I'm not gonna retire. I mean, you take care of the rest of it from there. Oh my God. All right. So, hey, so how colonies get settled, right? Some people make a lot of money and kind of disappear into their mansions, and the rest of the colony has to kind of figure out a way to make it work. So, in chapter 10, we begin this sequence of very confusing scenes that are at Arnie's home the night that he decides to have drinks and have his friends over for cocktails, kind of thing. Helio will be there in the kitchen. Jack and Doreen will be there. Arnie will kind of move back and forth between the living room and the kitchen. Arnie will make an annoying mistake. He'll go to put some beautiful music on, and instead he'll pick a tape that has like white noise. It will very much jar everyone in the room, but particularly Manfred, I think. So that's basically what happens, and there's a little bit of migrating back and forth. The reason the chapters are confusing and really rather horrifying is that we see it from Manfred's point of view as he's drawing on the floor. He appears to just be a kid drawing. He's having these visions of the adults. Again, I'm not sure if everything that he's imagining is actually happening there. He's just taking a little bit of something and spinning it to an extreme. So are Jack and Doreen actually engaged in really heavy petting on the couch? Maybe, or maybe a lot of this is him sensing it, seeing it, and then taking it to this very morbid place to suggest that sex is somehow in the direction of the grave, death. Arnie goes in the kitchen, and Doreen comes in, and Arnie also tries to do a similar kind of thing. And Arnie's always seen as this figure consuming things. That seems to be how Manfred sees him. Not a good vision. Helio is the only figure who seems to be able to telepathically communicate with Manfred. I'll have you guys watch for that. Jack is the figure I'm most concerned about here because he makes a number of strategic mistakes. Here's the deal. He does seem to have a weakness whenever he can slide towards what a more sane society would call mental illness or schizophrenia. He can't control the environment around him. It seems like a terrible hallucination. He can't judge it accurately anymore. And he's going up against somebody who pretends to be a friend, but who may very well be an enemy. That would be Arnie Cott, not someone you want as your enemy. What does Jack do? He gets into the spirit of the things and he has a drink, and maybe more than one. At one point, Arnie comes out and Jack's glass is knocked over, even though he's working on the encoder. I get the feeling that everybody in this scene is drinking too much. Why? Why would Philip K. Dick write this into a science fiction novel that's supposed to be about action? His book is really about mind games, right, and mind control and controlling perception so you can then control people's lives. Jack should have stayed sober through the whole thing. Instead, by getting drunk, he's pushing things with Doreen, and I think antagonizing Arnie more on that front. More importantly, Jack does the stupidest thing in the world. He remembers the drawing. He says, "Hey, Arnie, you got to see this. Look at this. I was taking my father up into the mountains where he's planning to buy them because he's going to make a huge amount of money." Oh, I never mentioned that to you, did I? uh, and boy, I mean, his view of the drawing is this terrifying view of the future. Arnie looks at it and right away says, "You betrayed me. You know, your father's going to make all this money. I was working with you and Manfred in an effort to be able to manipulate the knowledge of the future, and you know, been working, you could say, for my enemy, your father." It's not quite that black and white, but that's how he sees it. So Arnie is going to try to still turn this all around. He's going to try to command time, control time. He's going to go up into the FDR Mountains to a place called Dirty Knobby with Manfred and this kind of instructions. And he's going to time to travel into the past. This is the last chapters of the book. Just giving you some sense of where we're going to go so that as we progress there, it makes sense. Things to keep in mind that Manfred's visions of the future are only maybes, they're not certain, and that the Bleakmen, who seem to be, this dying or fading out, powerless people, their power may lie in vision. They too might be able to see some ways into the future. Uh, Remember, Helios said, "Mankind is not leaving Mars anytime soon." That's why I'm aligning myself with the new conquerors. So, keep an eye on these figures because they've been easy to dismiss so far. Um, you'll see that they will play a key role in how things play out in the book. All right, so this is to help with those tricky middle chapters. Be patient with them. The reason he has to have the scene recur over and again, is to give you the feeling of not being able to control time, which is what Manfred seems to be struggling with, and how to dramatize that. He figures a scene that feels so familiar, people having drinks, a cocktail party, which seems so real that when you saw it being distorted, it would give you a better feeling of what a time slippage might really feel like in real life, as opposed to something like an action film, which is so removed from how we ordinarily live our lives. All right, I think that's probably enough about these middle chapters, and we'll see if this works.